Good morning. My name is Reverend Rondesia Jarrett-Schell. I just want to start off by saying thank you for inviting me to preach and to be with you this morning. I have not had the pleasure to visit St. Margaret's before, so this is a great honor and a privilege for me. I was thrilled when Richard contacted me because I've heard so much wonderful good things about your parish and the things that you've done. Richard was correct. I do serve as a regional dean for our diocese, but I also serve as a residential minister for Georgetown University. So I work with college students. I also run an anti-racism workshop called Do This Initiative, which teaches tools and techniques to individuals and community on how to move from racial tensions in a conflict to a transformative learning experience. You can check out our website, dothisinitiative.org. We host a monthly workshop with one coming up at the end of August 29th. So I keep really busy. I also have a son and a husband. My husband is also a priest, Reverend Peter Jarrett-Schell, and I have a 7-year-old son, which you'll probably hear in the background. I am working from home. I am preaching from home. He could be playing. He could come in and say that he's frustrated or sounds of joy, either one, and just letting you know that that might be an interruption or not. He is full of imagination, creativity, and energy, and he doesn't need coffee. What's that all about? I had to have a cup of coffee just to be able to function in the morning. He doesn't need that. He's up earlier than me and is that way all day. I'm just wondering, when do we lose that ability to have so much energy? He has a free spirit, and I love it. We give him a lot of space to be himself. Still, there's times when he could be a bit much. This happens a lot in the grocery store and in the museums. He is excited, so he runs around and sometimes gets into things, as kids do. And in those moments, I like to turn to my husband and say very loudly in public, "Sir, you need to do something with your son," and then walk away. I get a kick of doing that each and every time. And my husband just stands there confused and rolls his eyes. And eventually he laughs, but I'm just cracking up as I walk away. Other people don't get the joke. They were like, "Wow, she was so bold." Today's reading got me thinking about, how we use language. When I say to my husband, "Your son," I'm using distancing language. I'm emotionally separating myself from my son, from my husband. I'm disconnecting myself from responsibility or care. I even emphasize this more when I walk away, when I physically walk away. I create a rift. They become the other, and I see them as a problem that is not mine. It's funny how that works. It completely relies on context. If I were to say to my husband, or if someone would say to my husband, "Is this your son?" which he is asked a lot because he is a white man. My son is biracial and has light brown skin. He will respond with joy and confidence, yes. He would even say, "This is my son," with an air of, "Why would you suspect? This is not my son." It's a connection. Your question is it reconnecting him or showing familial connection. Or if our son offended his father, I would say to him, as my husband would be angry and frustrated with him, "He is your son." I'm not using that language to distance. I'm reconnecting. I'm reminding him of their connection to one another. It's amazing how distancing language happens when we're angry, hateful, distrustful, abdicating responsibility. We disconnect ourselves from others or situation. We subconsciously use this type of language. When we talk with our siblings, I know I do this all the time, about a problem with our parents, we may say, "Your mother called me the other day." Your mother. Separating myself because she's my mother too, right? Or when I say to my husband, "Your son locked me out of my phone," he kindly reminds me by saying, "Our son is very good with technology." Our son, reminding me of our connection. These subtle distinctions rely on context to be best understood. Because of course, You speak the truth when you use correct possessive pronouns. The question is, are you exercising yourself from the situation or person by the possessive pronoun you choose to use? Are you disconnecting yourself from the care or responsibility by the use of your words? We see this happening all the time. And again, it depends on context. When we say those people, we're distancing ourselves from them, even though they're in our community. Right? We see it with the phrase, all lives matter. It's a true statement. All lives do matter. It's a factual reality, except when we use it directly after Black Lives Matter. Black Lives Matter is a reminder that we are people in our community that are egregiously mistreated, marginalized, and murdered. It's a reminder that we are a community. It is a call to help those who are having oppression against them. When we someone else, all lives matter directly after hearing Black Lives Matter, then they are insisting, they're not insisting that we're all community. It's typically used to stop the conversation and turn those words into dismissing, distancing language, which lack care or concern for certain people in our community. Distancing language is quick. It can be a direct window into a person's feelings or believing in that moment. It may be different in a different moment, but in that moment. Jesus tells us what comes out of the heart proceeds, what comes out of the mouth proceeds from our heart. What is in our heart will be spoken clearly, whether intentional or unintentional. That which we have learned, that which we have taken in, absorbed from our surroundings, those things we truly hold dear will come from our heart, not from our mind. Deep change comes from the heart, not from what we think or simply what we believe. We can know our mind, what our mind is, and we can know in our mind it's time to stop a bad habit, but can do all the intellectual exercises to do it, but we'll continue doing that habit. But unless that desire takes root in our heart as well, we may not move forward in our goals. Oh man, it's quick. We may not know what's in our heart until we make a mistake, what we truly believe, what we truly hold deep rooted doesn't really reveal itself until like some high emotional situations. And sometimes you'll know you're not aware until someone points it out. When someone says, hey, I noticed you said, or did you know that you did X, Y, and Z? Well, that's there being very kind to help us learn more about ourselves and what we do that we may not be readily available in our mind. Because mistakes happened, but mistakes can be helpful too. Even Jesus makes mistakes. I know this is a hard statement because Jesus is divine, but Jesus is also human. And he too spoke from his heart. And there was a woman who did the same. And in that moment, he realized the distancing language and his mistake. And thanks to the woman, he reconnected and corrected, and it changed his ministry. Our reading has two parts. It begins with Matthew 20, 10 to 20, which you didn't have to have, but I'm happy that your congregation also included, where Jesus explains to the disciples about the statement, it is not what goes into the mouth that defiles a person, but is what comes out of the mouth that defiles. And he ends it with what comes out of the mouth proceeds from the heart. And this is what defiles. For out of the heart comes evil intentions, murder, adultery, fornication, theft, false witness, slander. These are what defiles a person. But to eat with unwashed hand does not defile. Now there's tons more to unpack that, and I didn't have time to kind of include that big chunk along with this one, but I would like to note that those evil intentions, which we would recognize from the 10 Commandments, are all the things that would distance us from one another. They are actions that belittle, dismiss, disregard, damage our relationship with others in our community. In short, they're distancing. And distancing language can be one of the things that come out of our mouths from our heart. Then we have the bit from Matthew 21 through 28. Jesus is constantly being interrupted by a Canaanite woman. And it's interesting that these two passages are together, but at this, next thing you know, he's walking around, he's with the disciples, and there's a Canaanite woman, and she's constantly interrupting and constantly bothering them. And she's shouting, "Have mercy on me, Lord, Son of David. My daughter is tormented by a demon." And Jesus ignores her. But she's loud, right? She doesn't give up. And the disciples want Jesus to send her away. And Jesus continues to ignore, and she keeps shouting. Then finally, Jesus answers, "I was sent only to the lost sheep of the house of Israel." But she persisted. "Lord, help me." This is what came out of his heart. It's not fair to take the children's food and throw it to the dogs. Let's pause here for a moment. It's a little perplexing why Jesus would say this. Earlier in the gospel, Jesus healed the centurion servant, saying that the centurion had great faith. The centurion, Roman guy, who wanted his servants healed. Jesus did that. What's the difference between the Gentile centurion and the one kneeling before him, this woman, Canaanite woman kneeling before him? What's the difference? Was it a gender issue? Was it because she was a Gentile woman that he ignored her? Was the centurion servant a Jewish man where he felt like, well, if I heal him, I'm still, maintaining and making sure the house of Israel is served? Was that why Jesus healed the servant? Either way, he calls her and her people dogs, distancing language, and he refused to help. Now, this is where I also have to pause again. Why would Jesus do this? Like, Jesus is about love and care and hope, but Jesus is also human. Yes, God, infallible, God full of love, but God became human to learn more about us, which means Jesus made the same mistakes to understand and empathize with us. Jesus was a kid. Jesus disrespected his parents. Jesus absorbed all the prejudice and craziness and all the things in his own society, which means also Jesus learned about it and unlearned it as well. Now the woman's heart. She speaks, the Canaanite woman. "Yes, Lord. Yet even the dogs eat the crumbs that fall under the master's table." I love this. This is like throwing shade, like the biggest shade. Like she just, it's quick, right? In that moment, like this is when you know what's here. Is it in those moments where you just, sometimes I wish I had that, like for me, it would have been like 10 days ago. I should have said this, right? But her words, she reflected back at him. She puts a mirror in front of him, right? She uses exact words, helping him see what had just taken place, reminding him of the distancing language that he had just used. She uses his words to show that even her people are listening to him and becoming believers. I bet you that startled them. When you hear yourself and you can't believe you said that you heard it from your own mouth in all those moments. Why did I say that? Oh my gosh. I bet it took him aback. He had to think about it, take it into his heart. And he realizes in that moment, quickly reconnecting, that her faith is like the faith of many of his followers. She is a follower of Jesus. She is a follower of God. She is a child of God, and a child of God will not be denied their call for help. In that moment, that's what that mirror did. In that phrase, reflectively listening and helping him hear, he replies, "Woman, great is your faith. Let it be done for you as you wish." Now, who gets their prayers answered exactly as they requested? I mean, if I get my prayers answered, it did not look like exactly like I asked God about it. Like I prayed to win the lottery. I have not won the lottery, but I will tell you, the man I married, that's winning the lottery. Man, he's awesome. Like I didn't expect that, but I definitely won the lottery in that sense. Or like never being hungry, I definitely won the lottery in that sense. If that was my concern about never going hungry, God has made that possible for me. Like there are ways in which I see that God didn't directly answer my lottery ticket prayer, but there are in different ways, the family and friends and the whole nine, that I am blessed, and God has helped me see that. But he said to her, after she held that mirror in front of him, as basically as you wish, the Princess Bride, right? I love you, as you wish. And she spoke from her heart. And what came out of her heart was her love for her daughter, her faith in God, and courage to know Jesus would do the right by her if she persisted in her prayer. Immediately, her daughter was healed. It's amazing. Like as a parent, I tell my son, don't do this, and then I do it. And then I have to be like, okay, hold up, wait a minute, hold up. This ended up becoming a teaching moment, a learning moment, a growing moment, an empathetic moment, not just for Jesus, but for us. This is what I love about Jesus. This is what I love about God through Jesus, is Jesus' ability to empathize with what we go through and our struggles and our challenges. Like when those mirrors are held in front of us, and the call to reflect on ourselves and reflect on our ways and say, you know what, I want to make a change, and I want to try and do better, and I want to make the better steps. Knowing that God does this too. And the Canaanite woman wasn't the only one where this happened. Abraham did it too. Abraham stood in front of God. Abraham, who was so obedient. God told him to leave his land, and he went, packed up his things and went. He stood before God and said, when God said, I'm going to destroy this land over here, Abraham said, well, what if there's one good person in that town? Will you destroy it? God's response after hearing that and thinking about that goes, no, I'm not going to do it. And then there's Job, right? Who lost everything, whose clothes are torn, whose ashes are thrown on him, who says to his friends, I had faith. I don't know why all of these bad things are happening to me, but I will not be better or stop mourning until God comes down, God's self, and talk to me. And God does. We always tell God has his way of just hearing our call, our even our reminders that God is connected to us, reminding God about the covenant. And he does so again with Jesus. We all use distancing language. We all absorb all the prejudiceness and craziness of our world, and our days are filled with constantly looking in the mirror and listening to ourselves. And I invite you to continue to do that, to be aware of the way we use language, especially distancing language. Remembering and wondering, like, who gets our help in our community? Who gets our respect, our care, our concern? Who do you see as being part of your community? Who have consciously or subconsciously been left out? It isn't about making anyone feel guilty. It's a reminder of reconnecting with our community. It's a reminder that we are children of God. We're all children of God. It's a reminder of, like, how do we treat and see our siblings? Once you find a disconnect, I invite you to reconnect, not just in language, but in action. It's like a dance, really. We make missteps, but if we keep dancing, if we keep learning, if we keep moving and reflecting and learning and digesting and putting into our heart, next thing you know, we'll be able to be like Fred Astaire, and be able to move and dance, and it'll be subconscious. It sounds hard, yes, but Jesus did it, and he said we could do it, because he told his disciples when he fed the 5,000, when he said, greater things than this you shall do. So yes, we can do it. Amen.